And then Erik Røsæg is going to talk about culprits as contracts as environmental culprits.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and participate in this conference and see what's going on, sort of. And my impression after 2 days is that one of the big questions is who done it? And I know that the answer, or by now I know the answer is the company directors. Not all company directors I know, and not all board meetings I've been a party to myself are really that bad. And it happens really that you sit there and you try to do something nice for the environment and you really cannot do it. And so my thinking here is that sometimes lawyers actually can help the good company directors, if such thing exists, to try to draft contracts so that we avoid that they make it difficult to make the right environmental choices. Let me give you one example. This is from a study I did for a Norwegian ship-owning company. They were setting up an enterprise in Africa and to distribute cars all over Europe. And we did a study to see how this could be done in a combination of road carriage, rail carriage, and sea carriage in the most efficient way, both environmentally and economically. Interesting enough, we figure out that if we optimized environmentally, that would be about the same result as if we optimized economically. There was not a difference there. And that's obviously because of the energy prices. So high energy prices, that's a good thing for the environment. So in year 0, there wouldn't be a problem sort of to optimize. But then we looked at the contracts, and it seemed like they had in the draft different terms of revision. So let's imagine then that something drastically happens that will be significant for the environmental assessment of these contracts in one of the years. Could we revise it? In year 10, it wouldn't be possible anymore to have all the contracts and get the optimal combination, neither environmentally nor economically. So we sort of were about to make an environmental trap for ourselves. So we need to think about a very simple thing, namely that contracts need to be adjusted for environmental purposes. Perhaps not for commercial purposes, because there is a belief that binding contracts are a good thing, but at least for environmental purposes. Let's imagine that we had a somewhat different contract law that would allow the adjustments of contracts to get optimal environmental results. In the Scandinavian countries, we have a clause in the Contracts Act for revision of unreasonable contracts. But what about environmentally unsound contracts? Shouldn't they be revised? And if that's not the background law in the Contracts Act, perhaps one would need a clause in the contract. Okay, I'm a maritime lawyer, so my other example is also shipping. And you never see these ships, but actually they sail quite fast these days. And they get to the coastline. But the environmental sound thing is that they go a lot slower, so-called slow steaming. Why? Simply because the energy consumption increases with the square of the speed, roughly. And I put the euro sign on the y-axis here, but that doesn't matter because the energy prices, the bunker prices, they sort of correspond very much with the consumption of bunkers. So the point is that it's both a financial and an environmental incentive for slow steaming. Today, perhaps 95 or perhaps more of the cargo ships go slow steaming. That means that the industry, having been given the right incentives, have done the right thing. And people are interested in this, but then there are a few things that sort of create trouble. And that's where I think we lawyers should be foresighted and help the industry a little. And one thing is the queue system in ports. Okay, many ports are congested. The worst port is perhaps the Australian coal ports in Newcastle. But anyway, there is need to organize these queues, because if you use the system which is perhaps natural, first come, first served, that will be an incentive to go as fast as you can to get a place in the queue, isn't it? So what we did in another project was to sort of find an alternative queue system that could be used in sort of all kinds of ports. There are many other systems, and sometimes you book a place in the queue, but that's not viable in all kinds of ports. But then we have this other contractual problem, namely the ship is going slow, and someone will save a lot of money on that, not only energy. So how should these savings be shared between the ship owner and the charterer of the vessel? I don't care very much exactly how they are shared, but the problem that they need to agree on that is, of course, a hindrance in making an agreement. So perhaps it could be helpful to have some default rules on speed in charter parties. In the ordinary background law in most countries, in what's called void charter parties, where you pay for the distance, then they say that the ship should go not as fast as can, but as fast as usual. Due dispatch. Perhaps, no, it's not 1 minute. perhaps a better rule will be to go for the better environmental option. In the Maritime Law Commission, we proposed that, and that will perhaps be the default rule in Norway. Then often you have consequential errors when you start fiddling with this system of contracts. And I had the opportunity to go through a number of charge parties from a number of ship owners this winter. And we saw that this rule on reduced speed was not incorporated in all the bills of lading, that is, the contract for the receiver of the cargo. And then there is a lot of evil in here, because there are also certain incentives that you cannot get rid of only by this. And as I say this only to illustrate the complexity in this that lawyers must help the industry to resolve. And that is, when the ship in a voyage charter party gets to port, sooner or later it starts to run some waiting fees. So that will be an incentive, regardless of all the other things here, for the ship to go as fast as can and increase speed up to the level of the waiting fee, which is called demurrage. We can also change that. Generally, we can say that it's very important that there is a relationship between who makes the decisions and who gets the right incentives. And as lawyers, we can help people to get the right incentives.